Welcome to Virtual Ownership. My name is Abhijit Kerkar, and I'll guide you through this video series on virtual ownership. This section is the introduction and index section of virtual ownership. After this index video, there'll be videos which cover in 5 sections different aspects of virtual ownership. This is our guiding principle for virtual ownership. So, virtual ownership, what is it? This is the question the video series seeks to answer. It takes you from the question to the exclamation mark or the aha moment when you realize what virtual ownership can do for you and for this planet. It is meant to make you think and reflect on you and your world. While you watch the videos, there'll be some aha moments. If we have made you think, this video series has delivered its intention. So back to the question. What is virtual ownership? To understand virtual ownership, let us look at two concepts which have been adopted in the past. They were new concepts when they were introduced, but were adopted after people saw their usefulness. You'll see similarities as we go along. To look at the first case, we need to travel back in time to the 1970s and look at the process of getting from chaos to order. Let's assume we are in the year 2022 today. The first case we look at is how the credit card system was introduced, and more importantly, the situation before it when banks tried to control it all and opposed sharing data for transactions. Our story takes us back to 1970. So let's rewind time a bit and take you back to the 1970s. Things were quite different in the 1970s, and a person called Dee Hock was trying to convince the CEO of Bank of America to give up ownership and control of their credit card program for a new system he had set up. It would later be called Visa. The system which existed prior to Dee Hock's efforts was that each bank had its own card system, cards which it gave to its customers. So if you had a card issued by Bank A, it would work only if there was a reader system at the retailer which supported Bank Card A. So imagine the retailer's problem. He had to connect with card reader systems for all banks which issued cards. So a card A would work at retailer 1 only if he had a card reader system for Bank Card A. There was one small problem. There were more than 1,000 banks in the US alone, and globally more than 5,000 banks. So he would need many card systems to cater to all customers. Clearly, this was not going to work. So how to make this work was the question before Dee Hock. The banks needed to cooperate where there was interaction between them and the outside merchants. So Visa was set up, where the banks issued Visa cards on behalf of the bank's customers, and these cards would be accepted by retailers globally. Also, the retailer needed to have just one Visa card reader, which simplified his life. The customers were happy as their cards could be used at retailers globally. Now let's move to 1972, when Visa was functioning and you had to travel across Europe and the world. You had to go through multiple countries, through multiple currencies, and exchange n number of times. Your itinerary takes you through countries in 6 continents across the globe. And as was customary during those times, you carry cash and traveler's checks. You anticipate the cash required for each country, and hopefully it goes according to the plan. But imagine how convenient it is with a credit card. Now let's travel further in time from 1970s to 1998. This is when we look at the second case. This is when the internet is crawling ahead and standing up. Companies like Yahoo were on the top, and portal was a strategy. The browser wars had begun between Netscape and Microsoft for browser dominance. There was a small company called Google which focused only on search, getting people to other sites. How ridiculous, the leadership at portals thought. So let's travel to year 1998. In this year, you went to websites on the internet, and the whole focus is on eyeballs. And the portal strategy was to get all data on one site like Yahoo or similar sites. The strategy was simple, and valuation was done on eyeballs or how many people watched. It did not matter if people bought anything on the sites or not. There was a perception that you could keep people locked onto a site by giving them email, weather, news, or whatever else it took to keep them there. Search was seen as an add-on and at the bottom of the list. Search was made difficult to find, since search meant you would move somewhere else. More as a stepson at the bottom of the list, as these portals tried to keep a person on their platform. How practical would it be to memorize what you visited last week or last month? So people tried search on these portals, multiple choices, multiple irrelevant results, again n number. Search was the stepchild of portals. So now let's travel further in time to the year 2022, and you own n number of products. And as you see, in the first two cases, we had n number of exchanges. In the second case, we had n number of sites we went to. And now we have n number of products which we use and throw. So all your products, from your electronics, transportation, sports equipment, to your kitchen equipment, to your musical equipment, to all your important documents and keys, are what you own. You own pets also, but we keep them out of the discussion here as we look at the recycling part of virtual ownership, not the return part. The return part would be applicable even to animals. So all these products you see on the screen here, we use anywhere from 2 to 50 years and dispose. So first, let's remove the animal part. Now these products which are here have a life cycle anywhere from 2 to 50 years. And during these years, you dispose of these goods. So any idea where they go or how they are disposed of? Well, quite a mountain, as we shall see further. An important point to note here is the similarity with the banks and the Visa example. There in the banks, they could not figure out how to deal with external merchants. And here we have not figured out how to deal with our goods once they are disposed of. And also the complexity, as we have seen with the N number, is a recurring theme. So what you have is mountains of e-waste, clearly unsustainable, and your computer and printer would be there, and a mess like the bank payments in 1970s. So you need a different system for this to work. So let's reflect. So in the year 1972, you exchange cash at n number of places. Question, do you require a credit card or debit card? The year is 1998 and you go to n number of websites. Do you require a search engine? Is the question. And the year is 2022 and you own n number of products and data. And do you require a virtual ownership platform? So not all would agree on requiring a card in 1972 or a search engine in 1998. But in hindsight, the answer is obvious because it made your life easy. Why did we take these two systems before talking about geo and virtual ownership? It was to understand how systems which work are designed. If they take care of their users' interest, users are willing to use the system. In the bank transactions, the systems did not work till the banks cooperated with external players like Visa. Individually, one bank could not have got the system to work, but collectively, following a set of rules, they got the system to work. It took them from chaos to order. Similarly, in 1998, the strategy of portals did not work, and slowly they were irrelevant because they refused to cooperate and tried to keep a user locked in. So now let's look at virtual ownership with this hindsight on how systems work. Now let's look at how a virtual ownership platform works and then see why your data and your product's data is important. You have a unique identity to function in the world, and that is your name. Starting with your birth and ending with old age and your death, and governs all you do between birth and death. Study, work, bank, email, shop, travel, vote, pay, own a house, own anything, marry, hospitalize, donate. All and much more is tied to your identity. You shop, you travel. Similarly, you give a unique identity to your product or goods which you own and enable all processes between their life and death. Starting from the birth of a product in the factory to its demise at the end of the product life cycle and all in between. Like sell, resell, buy, lost, found, repair, loan, specifications, receipts, spares, maintain, IoT framework, upgrade, recall, own, recycle to comply with laws like ROHS, California, e-waste, WEEE. And another interesting case is your ability to communicate. Communicate through your goods. And finally, warranty and e-documents. You can do a lot of things for your benefit and also for your planet's benefit. So you can do all these things after you give an identity to your product. Now, all things in life should be fun in doing, and even green recycling, if it is a part of many other positive things, helps you generate interest in recycling and monetizes it. So let's continue. We take the real life scenario and the virtual world scenario. And in the real world is on the left hand side, and on the right hand side, you have the virtual world. Now let's look at the real world and the whole life cycle of a product when it starts life from a manufacturer and lands up with you and then to the end of its life cycle. For this, we select three products: a camera manufacturer, a cycle manufacturer, an electric cycle manufacturer, and a mobile manufacturer. And in all these three cases, we have you in the picture. In case of camera, you are the first owner. In the case of the electric cycle, you are the second owner. And there's this red line which shows discontinuity of ownership when the cycle is stolen from you and passes on to a random person. And then finally, in the mobile case, you are the third owner at the end of recycling. And here we have assigned some timelines to the life cycle of the product: 20 years for the camera, 15 years for the electric cycle, and 8 years for a mobile. These, as you can see, are very optimistic value in our use and throw culture. So because of our user and throw culture, these would be quite short. Now let's see how virtual ownership is useful. And before we get there, let's have a look at the laws for product use and disposal. So you have laws like ROHS, WEEE, and across countries you have different laws. Like in California, you have Electronic Waste Recycling Act or some E-Cycle Act in Washington. And the onus is on recycling targets. And other countries have similar laws across the world. And the issue is not with intentions, but implementation. And here, each one of us has a role. The governments all over the world are concerned with the pollution of the world and the problem of e-waste. However, they have no way of encouraging or enforcing it other than passing legislation. Can we turn the problem of e-waste into an opportunity? You need to involve people for their benefit. I'll give you a small anecdote. We had gone to the head of green recycling at one of the large mobile phone manufacturers in the world. They sold around 400 million phones per year globally, and we asked this head of green recycling as to how many phones do you recycle. He had no idea. We then asked him if they could use virtual ownership to tell their customers that their phones could not be stolen, since each phone came with virtual ownership, and in this way it would benefit their users and also help them establish a connect with their customers over the product life cycle. Of course, they had no clue here also. And as is the state with most manufacturers who have no idea where their products were, it was a bubble they were in. And the bubble was about to burst. The intentions of legislation are good, but there needs to be a different way to get people involved. And because of people, manufacturers will be involved. We believe people will help if their interests are aligned with the rules. The bubble will burst. Now, let's look at the way a product comes to you from a manufacturer. The manufacturer sells a product to a large retailer, both physical retailer and online retailer. It comes to you or the first owner after you buy it from the retailer. And let's say you sell the camera to the second owner, or you buy a cycle from the first owner, or a mobile phone changes hand to a second owner. Now, this goes on till we come to the third owner. Now, in the case of cycle, we have put a red divider to indicate that the cycle is stolen from you and you lose physical ownership of the cycle. So it disappears from you and lands up with a random third person. Now, this random third person may be a thief or a person sold to by a thief. The thief just wants to steal and make money, and so he sells it off to a fourth owner. Now, let's look for a moment at a graph. The timeline on the x-axis is the number of years, and the timeline on the y-axis is the price. This shows the price of a car when it was new and right shiny out of the manufacturers, and over 25 years it loses its value to come to around 1,000 euros. Similarly, in the case of the mobile phone, it starts life new at 1,000 euros, and then end of life price in 5 years is 30 euros. And something similar for this skateboard, which starts at 300 and in 25 years comes down to perhaps 100 euros. So around the world, each product has a different life cycle value, and around the world, people also value a product differently. Now we look at this recycling part where the fourth owner just recycles whatever goods he has, and similar would be the case with other users of the camera or of the mobile phone, or it ends up in trash if it is not recycled, which is what typically happens in many countries. Now, let's go back to see what will happen when the virtual world is there. In the physical world, the products are with the third owner, and the cycle is with the person who stole the cycle. The years represent the lifespan assumed for different products. Now, in the physical world, you have lost the cycle to a third random person who has stolen it. But in the virtual world, you are still the owner of the cycle. And the cycle has a unique Geon identity, which is physically etched on the cycle. So what you do is go ahead and report your cycle lost on Geon platform. Now the cycle data becomes public and can be seen by all globally that it is lost or stolen, and the location where it was lost or stolen. If the thief in red, let's show him in red here, if he tries to sell his cycle to a fourth person, the fourth person could see on public data that the cycle is stolen and is marked with a Geon number. So he has a choice to either buy a stolen product cheap or else refuse to buy it. Now, this would have an impact globally with the way things are used. Also, insurance companies will have lower rates for insurance as the probability of virtual ownership products being stolen goes down as thieves avoid virtual ownership. However, if the person is not a thief and is honest, shown by green color, he just contacts the virtual owner through the Geon code on the cycle and returns it to him. So the cycle is returned to the owner. And the virtual owner, after his product has been returned, marks it as found and removes it from the public listing. So here we have handled both cases, the lost case and the stolen case. Now let's take the cycle to the last owner, as we previously had, and remove the lost and found insurance cases. Let's take the case when the camera was with you and you had generated virtual ownership for the camera. You got benefits like data about your product, receipts, repairs, recall information if the manufacturer was involved there, spares, etc. in one place. Now let's look at some of the other benefits of virtual ownership also. Let's take the case of you as a second owner generating virtual ownership for your cycle before you lost it. So you had prevention of theft, and perhaps the cycle would not have been stolen from you. You had free return, and you as the third owner for the mobile phone in recycling case, you had recycling benefits here. The other interesting thing is, once you put data of the product as a virtual data, people who own the product subsequent to you also get the benefits of virtual ownership. So all these benefits are shown here in green. Now let's return back to when the product was with the manufacturer, and let's see what happens if the manufacturer has joined virtual ownership. The manufacturer can enter data, and the product comes to the first owner, and the first owner has a very short registration process of about 30 seconds, and he gets all data about his product on virtual ownership, plus the manufacturer gets a connect with the first owner of the product. All the business is centered around the person. He gets perhaps the warranty, the spares, the servicing schedule of the product. And in case the product has defects and some manufacturing issues, and say the manufacturer has to recall the product, the process is very easy. Take the exploding battery case with Samsung Galaxy Note some years ago, or the issue with cars made by General Motors, which had braking system issues. These issues become very easy for the manufacturer and user to resolve. Also, the user sets how much data is shared with the manufacturer, and he may receive just information about his products and no advertising or product launches by the manufacturer. Another advantage is, since the virtual ownership is generated by a manufacturer, the goods are confirmed as original products. Take the case of a Louis Vuitton bag or a Swiss watch. Since it's an authentic confirmed product, the resale value of the product is high for the user. It is also easy for a manufacturer to have touch with all owners across the product life cycle till the end of recycling, till the end of life or recycling phase. Now let's move further and see what happens when a retailer can enter data. And here too, we have the same benefits where he enters data. And then we come to the case where a user enters data. And as you can see, the subsequent users also benefit because of this data. Now, let's come to a very interesting case. And that case is reusability of data, data reusability as we call it. Let's take this example where a user or you create a virtual identity for your product. And it takes 2 minutes to create, and then it goes for approval for the model to verify that it's the same model and it exists. So suppose you have a Canon EOS 250D DSLR camera, then it takes 2 minutes for you to create the model, and the Geon reviewer examines a model exists and just approves it, and then you get a Geon code for that. And you become the first person who gave that EOS 250D DSLR a virtual code. Now, any person who has a similar EOS camera, like this owner who is shown in yellow, and this is color coded. So the person in yellow has all these yellow products. The person in blue, you have all the blue products, and so on. So now he can generate his Geon code in 30 seconds flat. Perhaps he likes this concept of virtual ownership and uses it for his cycle, which is a particular model, and generates a code for this model. And perhaps you have a similar kind of cycle. So in his case, he takes 2 minutes to create the model, and approval takes some time to approve that the model is the right model. And you have a similar cycle, and you generate it in 30 seconds flat. So this is master data reusability at work. Now, let's take the last example of a person who owns the mobile phone, and say it's the latest iPhone 10 or iPhone 11 or 12, whatever the case may be. And he generates an identity for his phone. Now, similarly, all people can generate a unique identity for their iPhone 10, 11, 12 model. For the same model, if there are 1 million phones globally, all users create their own virtual identity by just clicking and selecting that iPhone model and generating a unique number for their phone. Now let's take a fun case. And this is interesting, and it's the ability for a person to communicate through the goods a person owns. So in this case, the person in blue owns all these items, and we have a random person in green, and he may need to communicate with the person here through his products. Excuse me. Now, this person in green can communicate just by scanning the identity of the good. So let's see what type of communication happens here. So it could be something like a person wants to move the car away because it's blocking a doorway, or notify a user after it is returned. Or it could be someone who has found your passport and sends you a message to collect it from him at a location, or gives his contact details. Or it could be someone who has found your camera. Or it could be a servicing person for whom you don't want to give your mobile number or email, and he can communicate to you through his car. It could be a person who doesn't have your phone number could communicate with you Can you give me a ride at 2 p.m. or something like that? Or this could be interesting for you, where you want to avoid fines. Or it could be some important document you left at some place. Or it could be your cat is at our place, or your dog is not in the kennel, or your boat is leaking, or your keys are with me. So there are different use cases. And once you have virtual ownership, it gives you the ability to get connected through your goods. So now, what is your most important asset on the internet? It's you and your data. And if you own a physical product or data, do you not own it everywhere in the world? Even in the virtual world? So that is what virtual ownership is about. A user's most important asset on the internet is his data. And because of the absence of a system centered around our identity, there is no motivation for a user to control his data. And if his data can be monetized, a user has interest in data. Too many large companies are trying to control different parts of our data and monetizing our friends, search, etc. They give a free service in some areas, like search or connecting with friends, but then you are the product to sell ads to. The model has to be centered around you and not the company giving you services. You control your data. So this brings us to the close of virtual ownership section, the introduction section of virtual ownership. Just to re-summarize and recap, today all entities act in their own domains, like a manufacturer, retailer, an insurance company, banks, telecom operator, leasing company, and they have to deal with data. And the string that ties it together is the common thread between beads for transaction is virtual ownership, because you have to exchange data and that data resides with the person owning that data, and that is virtual ownership. Now it could be represented actually in another way, because generally the user is at the center of data, and it could be represented like that. And the company as a user is also a user, so it actually comes here. And green recycling also becomes a part of the way we treat our world. So that also has to be at the center. So it is more accurately represented in this manner. So you have the user, you have the company as a user who are consumers, and then you have green recycling. And then you have different verticals who use that data, your data, to give you services. So in an insurance company, it could be about your goods. A retailer sells you goods. A telecom operator helps you communicate that data. A IoT, it's more of a technology which could be used by a retailer or a manufacturer or a leasing company. So these are the different kinds of companies which use your data. So we have covered the introduction to virtual ownership part. And this is the index section of virtual ownership. And let's walk through what we are going to cover in the other videos. So in the section 1, we are going to cover more in detail what virtual ownership is and its uses. And we are going to have focus on more on its uses, since we have covered a lot of part of what virtual ownership is in this video. Then in section 2, which products can you virtually own is what we are going to cover. So in the introduction section, we covered why. In section 1, we cover what. In section 2, we give you ideas on which products you can virtually own. And then in section 3, we actually show you how to virtually own your product, how to go on the JION platform and create virtual ownership for a certain product. That's what we do. So why, what, which, how is what we are going to cover. And then section 4, we cover how much it costs. And finally, in section 5, some interesting information on JION, how it started, what do the colors of JION represent. So the colors also represent something on JION and are not random colors. Now, some helpful information before watching the videos. JION, or virtual ownership, is a platform for all people on this planet, all countries, all languages. And we want to get the message of virtual ownership to as many people as possible on this planet, for which we want to have closed captions in as many languages as possible. You can enable closed captions in your video settings by clicking on these two icons shown here. So these two icons. On clicking this icon, you can select your language, and on clicking this icon, you enable the closed caption settings. So you can read the video series as we go along in your language if you don't understand English. And JION is meant for all people on this world. So if your language is not present here, you're welcome to help us translate it into your language. So people speaking your language could get the message of virtual ownership. And you can do this by joining YouTube's community contributor program for translations. Just Google YouTube contributors to find the link. And after you have translated, your name appears in the language credit. So join the fun in getting the message across. So the next video is series 1, section 1, what is virtual ownership and the uses of virtual ownership. Thank you for watching this presentation, and any comments and feedback are welcome on info@jion.com. Thank you.